Oh, it's live now, I think.
Yeah.
We're live. All good.
That
All right.
red box.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, this is our 5th virtual roundtable conversation. So our 5th one. And if you've joined us before, welcome. You know how this goes, but just a real special welcome for those of you who may be joining us for the first time. And if this is your first time, the point of this roundtable conversation is just to have some real, practical conversations about important topics for our young people. And we've covered a whole lot of different topics over the last, 5 months, I think. But tonight, our conversation, it's a really good one. It's on intimacy with Jesus. And so as Christians, I guess we know that having a relationship with Jesus is important. But I guess, what does that look like? Why is it important? How do we actually practically do this on a day-to-day basis? So that's kind of what we're going to be chatting about tonight. But before we dive into that conversation, I do need to introduce to you guys who we have around our roundtable tonight. So Lucy, if you have been on Roundtable before, you know that Lucy is a regular. So welcome again, Lucy.
Oh, thanks, Amy. 5 times. That's cool.
Yeah, I have to say, Lucy, that we have covered a lot of topics in the last little while. And what's so cool about Lucy is that she's an all-rounder because she has something wise to say in every conversation. Like we've looked at finances and mental health and dating and relationships and a whole range of other things, and Lucy always has something very relevant to say. So we always appreciate you have you on the round table, Lucy.
Oh, thanks for the warm welcome back, Amy. That's nice.
And we also have 2 other guests this evening, and that is Pastor Cam Hooper and Megan Hunter. So Pastor Cam, would you like to tell everybody just really quickly who you are, maybe where you're pastoring?
Yep.
Yeah, just in 30 seconds.
Okay. I am the pastor at Fremantle, Cottesloe and Narrogin churches. So I've got 3 churches. Okay,
so shout out to those churches.
Yep. So I've been pastoring there for the last 2 years so far, or almost 2 years. I'm married to a lovely lady by the name of Kelly.
Hi, Kelly, if you're watching.
We've been married for 2 years.
What's happened in 2 years, Cam?
She's pregnant, so we're looking forward to a child next year. I'm a pretty all-round sort of person. I like lots of different things like sports or reading or, lots of different types of things. I'm pretty happy to jump in with anything, really.
Yeah. You're an all-rounder too then, Cam?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're really excited to have you on the table tonight. And we also have Megan. Now, Megan is not a pastor yet, but she's studying to be one, aren't you, Megan? So would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hello. Yeah, my name's Megan. I'm currently studying ministry and theology at Avondale. Shout out to Avondale. I highly recommend. I'm in my 3rd year. I just finished the other day, my 3rd year, which I'm very excited about. And
home stretch, Megan.
Yeah, it's gone really quick and I'm really excited to finish. A bit scared, but excited. But so I finished my 3rd year and I don't know if there's too much else to share. I grew up at Swan Valley Church, but at the moment I'm attending Belmont and Maid of Our Church. And I really like eating hot chips. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know about me.
Hot chip fan over here too. Really nice to have you guys on. And it's cool to have a pastor and then also a pastor in training on this conversation as well, which is really great. So obviously you guys know that our topic tonight, as you would have seen advertised on social media, is intimacy with Jesus. And so I just thought from the get-go, just leading into what the topic itself is. So for you guys, and I'm happy for anyone to jump in first for this, whoever's first, but when we say that word of intimacy, and then obviously in relation to Jesus, intimacy with Jesus, what does that actually mean? And what does it mean to you? Just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page, or even offering different perspectives on what does intimacy with Jesus even mean?
Okay,
Don't all jump in at once.
I think for me,
Yeah.
intimacy with Jesus, I think being really close with him and having a very close relationship, a daily relationship with him, and talking to him constantly. And I guess you can compare it like when you have an intimate relationship with a person, you're really, really close to them and you know each other really, really well, and that's what it should be like with God.
Yeah. So like those key words of like intimacy is closeness with Jesus. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks, Megan. Should I pick on anybody? No.
I was going to say, I like what you said, Megan, about it being like a friendship or like a relationship with another person. Because I guess when we say intimacy with Jesus, if we step back a little bit, you kind of think, oh, wow, maybe that sounds really strange. And maybe that sounds strange to some people. Like, hang on, Jesus, isn't he like the Son of God who was a Bible character, or who was like, featured in the Christmas story? Like, if we're thinking about what society might think. But as Christians, we believe that Jesus was a person, and we do believe that he is alive, and that we are able to have a relationship like a friend with Jesus. And so I think it's really cool and not so strange when we look at it from that perspective, that that's what we believe as Christians, and that means that we can have a relationship like a friendship with the Son of God, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, still blows my mind. I don't think I'll ever wrap my head around that one.
I really liked what Megan said about like getting to know each other like friends, and I think that's really key as well with that intimacy is recognizing and acknowledging that Jesus knows everything there is to know about us, and us wanting to get to know Jesus in that intimate sort of way.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, like, with intimacy, like any relationship, it builds over time, doesn't it? Like you grow in closeness and intimacy. And I think, that is the same with Jesus. Like Cam said, Jesus knows us, but for us to know his heart, it grows over time. And like any relationship, it takes time as well. Which I think is really important. I think you guys, it's really important just to set the foundation of that. Like Lucy said, it can be a strange concept of intimacy with Jesus. And so laying that foundation of, well, what does that actually mean? I think is really important. And so I guess leading on from that, so we're saying this is what it is, which was kind of what you just said, but why? Like, why do you think closeness with Jesus is important? Or why do you think friendship with Jesus is important? As a follower, like we're called to be followers or disciples of Jesus. So why then is intimacy, do you think, important as a follower?
Oh, isn't that kind of like Jesus is, like the Bible talks about Jesus being the life giver, and so if he's the life giver, isn't intimacy like that's crucial sort of thing? But not just that, like it describes him as being love and him being the source of love and things like that. Like if if you're intimate with Jesus, then you can then be like a more loving person and ultimately I think a better person. I don't know.
Yeah, and so I guess it's what you just touched on there, almost like character building in some ways. It helps our character building, so it's important because it changes us. It change, like you said about being a better person. So that's where I was bouncing off from, like that character changing. Any other thoughts?
I think it's really important to have a close relationship with Jesus and put him above everything else, because when we really think about it, anything else that we put our time into, our work, our hobbies, they're only temporary, whereas Jesus is eternal. He's more important than anything else. So no matter what we have going on in life or whatever's happening with each one of us, the most important thing is that we're close to Jesus, and nothing else really matters in the long term.
That's really
I love that eternal perspective, Megan. That's so good. Because I suppose like a normal part of life is that friendships come and go, and there's different seasons perhaps of where you feel close to someone and then maybe not so much at different times. But I think in my life, like Jesus is a constant, and he's a constant now, but he's a constant forever as well. And I know that through going through, like how amazing to be able to journey with God throughout my whole life, no matter what season I find myself in, no matter what situation. And so I think maintaining that relationship with Jesus is really critical for me, because I know that we're in it for the long haul together. He's got me forever, and I'm trusting him with my whole life. So I think it's important that we keep that intimacy, because it's going to be a while. I hope it is anyway. Yeah.
I think it's really true. Like if I think truthfully and realistically about all the relationships that I have with people, there's some sense of whether I've let the relationship down or they've let the relationship down. But with Jesus, like, it's foundational. It's like you mentioned, Lucy, foundational and consistent. And I think that's really key to being why we need to be intimate with Jesus, is because he'll always be relationally faithful. He'll always be consistent. He'll always be trustworthy. And that's foundational, or probably the only foundational relationship that we can really rely on in our life, I think.
Yeah. And what you just said then about foundational, it just made me think also foundational for every other relationship. Like, I think our relationship with Jesus is important, because on that hinges all our other relationships. Like, all our other relationships are going to be more fruitful and more powerful if they hinge on our initial relationship. So what you just said made me think about, that in relation to importance as well.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Like, I think all the relationships I have now have benefited from the relationship I've had with Jesus.
Yeah.
Just because you start loving people in a different way because Jesus loves you in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't have to be believers for your relationship to be impacted by your relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I also, one thing that you said before, Cam, about like Jesus is like a life-giving relationship. It made me think of the analogy that Jesus gives. I think it's in John 14. You ministry and theology, you can tell me I'm wrong. Where he talks about the vine and the branches. Is that John 14?
Ooh, sounds close.
Is it 14?
Yeah,
15? Maybe it's
14 or 15. You're definitely in the ballpark, Amy.
Somewhere around.
We'll fact check.
15. It's 15.
It's 15.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you. But that analogy, like, sometimes, like, it's like, oh, I've heard that before, but really the reality is a vine and a branch. Jesus says, if you are cut off the branch, you can do nothing. And that's so true. Like, a vine is a life source, isn't it? It's got the root system, it's got everything. And as soon as you cut a branch off from a life source, it's going to die.
Yeah.
And so, like, we may not physically die in the here and now, but we're going to spiritually die without being connected to the life source. And, Jesus says, I've come to give you life, and to life to the very fullest. And I kind of believe that without him, we can't ever really live life to the fullest if we're not connected. We can live life, but is it to the fullest? So that connection, being connected as the vine and the branch, I think is really important.
I like the translation, like we're talking about intimacy, but like from John 15, it talks about the vine and abiding in him, like abiding, like Jesus says, I think it's like 5 or 6 times there, he goes, abide in me. Essentially, he's just saying, connect with me, be intimate with me. And the translation to modern day language, I think, like, yeah, just be intimate with Jesus, you know?
That abiding word is intimacy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts before we kind of like can continue on in our conversation of why we think, I guess, you know, we're talking to young people who they have busy lives. Is there anything else that you would add to why you would encourage them to make this a priority?
I really like that you talked about the tree giving like the life source, because if I miss a day or two spending time with God, like I really feel it. Like the more I spend time with God, the more I realize I need him and that I need to depend on him. So I think, we definitely need to prioritize a relationship with God, because he really does give us life.
Yeah, I 100% agree that when you are having that intimacy and then you miss that time, it's then that you realize how important that is, because without it, I guess you are having a little bit of a severing away from that life source, and it just doesn't feel right. So I think that's a really beautiful reminder too.
I also think I like what you said, Amy, about being specific to where this panel is about young people and what it's like for us as young people to why for that time of our life. I think for me, probably at times during being like young, you have moments of incredible overwhelm, and they can be about lots of different things. And I think in those moments where you kind of have a couple of different choices. Like you can rely on yourself, you can rely on other people, or you can choose to put your faith and trust into Jesus and continue building a relationship with him. And I think looking back, I've probably tried the other two quite a bit. But every time when I've realized, hey, I'm going about this the wrong way in this time of overwhelm, I've tried relying on myself, I've tried relying on others. Each time I've realized how worthwhile it is pouring into that relationship with Jesus, and just going back to realizing grace and what that means, and realizing what God's love and, you know, who he tells me that I am during relationship with him has been so important for navigating those rocky times that we have when we're young as well. Things like career or like other different challenges, you know, like relationships, all sorts of things. I just think, wow, God is really so, that relationship is so valuable in those times particularly.
Yeah, definitely. And what you just said about, you know, rocky times, like I think that's the reality for all of us. You, like, for those listening, you might be in a rocky time right now, but you may not. But the reality is, unfortunately, you are going to at some point be in a season of that. And I just think coming back to the why again is that our time with God is kind of like an anchor point for that. And I know in Hebrews, I think it's 6, you know, talks about how, you know, God's word is an anchor for our souls, because an anchor obviously keeps a boat firm and secure. A storm can come and rage, but the boat stays firm and secure because it's anchored. And I think I know for me personally that when life gets choppy and the storms of life, how we often say, come, it's like that anchor point. Like the circumstances may still be tough, but having a relationship with God can anchor us in those times. And it doesn't change what's going on, but it's kind of like all of you have said before, it's that foundation, it's that consistency that just kind of anchors you during life's really difficult stages. So
yeah, I think as well as being formation or like foundational, as we've all said, I think it's also directional as well. Like the intimacy with Jesus really gives a good direction for a lot of and you mentioned before, Lucy, like the sort of, a lot of people can be in uncertain times at this moment, especially young people, whether they're in high school and just finishing grade 12 and thinking, oh, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? What career am I going to get into? People finishing uni or people in relationships and things like that. I think this intimacy with Jesus brings a good direction to life, whether Jesus guides them in a direction, or whether Jesus is like, I'm just here for you. Like I might not decide, like Jesus saying, I might not decide to reveal exactly where I want you in the future, but I'm just here for you, and my presence should be comforting and peaceful and things like that. And I know there's a lot of young people that I know that are in that moment of like, oh, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, am I making the right decision? Is this person the right person I should be dating, or is this career the right career I should be in? And I don't know if you guys can relate, but I can relate to that and go, I didn't know what I wanted or what I should be doing until I was, 30 something.
Yeah, may or may not still be in that boat, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing. As life changes, you're still on that process, no matter how old you are, I think.
Yeah. And that, like, just one other thing as well, Amy, like, I don't know, this idea of like the loudest voice comes to mind as well. Like as we go about our day, as we go about different seasons, like there are lots of loud voices that will come up at different times, like whether it's the voice of our friend group or our teachers or our parents or a relation, like a boyfriend, a girlfriend or whatever. But I think having an intimate relationship with Jesus ensures that his voice remains the loudest. And I think any different moment, whether good or a struggle, can have the ability to knock us off course a bit. And so just having that relationship that's constant, asking God to continually remind me, hey, God, who am I in your eyes first? And just keep that as the loudest voice, I think, is a really good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd be interested, Megan, because you said you're finishing your third year and you come up to like your last year of uni, especially in ministry, where there's huge uncertainty with like, what's the job that you're going to get called to do? Are you going to get called? Like, what's God or what's Jesus? Well, firstly, like, what's your intimacy with Jesus like, especially in that context?
For me, going through Avondale, I've always trusted that, because it's so clear that God has put me where I am. So I've always trusted that he's put me there for a purpose. And even if I don't get a job or a calling or whatever afterwards, like I still know that I'm called to ministry. So I'll still follow God wherever. It may be hard along the way, but I'll just keep trying to follow his plan, because it's really clear to me that he's leading me. So I don't know how I've got there, but I do trust God to get me to where I need to go.
That's beautiful, Megan. I love that. And I love that, you're called to ministry, and it doesn't matter whether along the way it's paid or unpaid, it's still you're called to ministry. And I think that foundation is really, really cool to move forward in. Guys, I love how you guys have just unpacked the why, and I think the why is really important of moving forward. But I'd love to segue into the how now. So the why, you guys nailed that. So for you, I'm going to ask personally, what's the how for you guys personally? Like, how do you personally cultivate that intimacy with Jesus on a daily basis? And what does that practically look like for you? Because it can look very different for different people and in different seasons of life too. So I'd love to know for those listening, so that they can kind of understand, some different ways that can look on a day-to-day basis for different people. people.
Okay, I'll go.
No, Megan.
I'm really excited to share this actually. So I when I pray, I write it down because I if I don't, either if I'm going to sleep, I'll fall asleep, or I get different, like I get off track in my head. And so I think it was at the start of college I started writing down my prayers, and it has like changed everything for me, just seeing God working and looking back on prayers and seeing that he answered it, even though I didn't realize in the moment. And I just love I love writing it down. And another thing that I do, which I highly recommend, is when I see God working in my life or doing something, or if he talks to me through a Bible verse or a friend, I write down what God has done so I don't forget what he's done, and I can go back to it and see how he's led. So I think it's really important to kind of look for me to document my relationship with God or write it down. I even have, if I don't have my prayer journal with me, I have notes on my phone where I just pray when I feel like it. And it has been incredible for me. And I've just grown so much closer to God doing that.
Yeah. So Megan, I'm a prayer journaler too, and I always say to people, it's either something that you love or you hate. And so I often say, like, I'm going to share that this works for me, but understand that this is not everyone's thing. But I can definitely relate to that. And I started prayer journaling when I was at college too. So it's been over 10 years, and I've got like a collection of prayer journals now. And like you, for me, it's really important because I do exactly the same thing. When I'm praying, I'll then start thinking about the shopping list that I need to like get things. So for me, it focuses me because I'm not generally going to write random things in the middle of my prayer. Which is what you said as well. And I love that documentation because so many times, sometimes I think it's human nature that sometimes we have moments of doubt or confusion. And so to go back and to look of where God has been faithful reminds me in the season that I am now that he will be faithful again. And sometimes I need that reminder. And other times it's like I go back and have a read and I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot I even prayed that. And like, I can see the evidence of that. It's actually 5 years on, but like, I can see the evidence of that. So I have to say now I don't do it as much as I used to, just because I'm in a season with little kids. And so sometimes I don't get that dedicated time just to sit down. And a lot of my prayer journals now have scribbles in them because like the kids will come along and scribble. I think it's kind of nice anyway. I know that in years to come, I'll look back and be like, oh, look at their little scribbles. But yeah, so like for those listening, like give it a go. If it works for you, it'll work for you. If you don't, like, you know that you can try something else. But it is definitely a good thing for those that are that way inclined. Yeah. What about Cam? What does it look like for you? Obviously, you're in ministry. Life is busy. It's at a fast pace. Obviously, like it is for most people. But how does it, look for you? Because you're obviously doing ministry as a paid job, and so some of it comes naturally in what you're doing through the day. But do you find it difficult sometimes to be able to separate your own personal time as well as obviously you're doing Bible studies and things, or preparing sermons, or whatever in your paid work? Like, do you find that, or does it complement each other? Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for you.
Yeah, it's like I've been told on several occasions to be like, separate your devotional time or your time intimacy with Jesus and your paid ministry work. And I find that really, I don't know, possibly even to me anyway, detrimental to my ministry work if I'm separating the two. Yeah. Like, most often than not, and I'm a firm believer that like when I preach or when I'm doing Bible studies or devotionals for people, I think it's really key to be genuine in yourself. And so if I'm not doing my devotional or my time with Jesus, or if I'm separating that from my ministry life, it tends to be less genuine.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It tends
it
to
does.
be less of my walk with Jesus and more just sort of a rote learning sort of walk with Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I actually really strive to go, whatever I'm doing in my devotionals, I like to include and go, oh, this is a part of my journey, or I might preach on something that I've discovered in my sort of journey with Jesus.
Because that's where your heart is at the time, isn't it? So it's going to be more passionate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember one preacher saying, he was talking about sermons, and he's going, like, all a sermon is God's word through you, and that's it. Like, if that's what if God impresses on your heart something and goes, look how good, or most often than not, Jesus goes, look how good my love is for you. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Why am I going to keep that hidden? Why am I going to be like, oh, I'm going to preach on something else? It just makes me want to talk about it more. But my intimacy with Jesus essentially just looks like waking up in the morning and delving into the Bible through prayer and just reading it. Just like, I love just reading the Bible and seeing what God has to say to me. And most often than not, God's trying to like adjust something in my life or show me something about Him. And then for the rest of the day, it's just like recognizing that Jesus is always there. And if I feel disconnected, it's usually I've pushed Him away.
So are you a routine person, Cam, or does it I'm interested to know. Are you a routine person? Like, do you have a kind of set way that you kind of do it at a set time, or is it a bit more sporadic through your day, or what does it look like for you?
Yeah, by nature, I'm not a routine person. I'm more spontaneous, but I find there's a benefit in creating a routine, or at least striving for a routine with my devotion with Jesus. And I found like first thing in the morning is always best, because it's starting that day off on the right foot, starting it off with Jesus. And I know some people, like, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say I'm not a morning person. I hate mornings. But I found, that time with Jesus, it helps with that awakening to another day, that essentially recognizing the blessing that Jesus has given us with another day or another breath of life and another opportunity to share Him with others. Not just in a ministerial sense, but I always love that saying, but I think it's some Catholic priest. He goes, share Jesus with everyone, and if you need to, use words.
Yeah.
And so if I'm to share Jesus with people, if it's through my actions or words, I need to know Jesus. I need to seek Him. And there was a couple of Bible verses like Jeremiah 29:13 that talks like about seeking after Jesus and Him going, if you seek after me, you will find me. And I love that. So each morning I just really want to seek after Him.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Lucy, I know that for you, like a part of your work is shift work. So you don't always have like a 9 to 5 job. So I'm interested to know, like, for you, how does intimacy with Jesus look for you, where your days can often look different from day to day?
Yeah, it's true. And I think like you guys have you've all touched on really good elements of it. I would say that for me, intimacy with Jesus is not easy. It's not something that comes naturally. And it's not something that I've found a completely straightforward, natural sort of experience. It's actually something I've had to work really hard at. And part of working at it has meant trying lots of different things that haven't worked. So I could list a whole bunch of things for you, and maybe I will do that, of things that I've tried.
Do list them, because some of those things that did work for you could work for somebody else, right?
That's so true. That's so true. So I think like one of the key ones that has stuck in my head which has been, a real focus of the youth department actually for a while, is this thing called the Hour of Power.
Yeah.
And it's something that Terry Johnson and Derek McCutcheon introduced me to a very long time ago. And
you love it or hate it.
Hey?
You love it or hate it.
Yeah, you totally do. But you know what? It is so worth trying it again and again. Like, I've had some that have been a complete flop where I've just felt a bit like I've been on a tangent, my brain's all over the place, but anyway. But I sometimes think, there's this thing called spiritual discipline, and sometimes it does take effort for us to get better at something, or to actually have to give it an intentional go. So I guess I'll encourage people to keep trying things. Journaling is not one that I've tried. I think I did it when I was quite little, but not for a while. So I'm actually thinking about starting that again, and revisiting that. I did have one thing that came to, I'm also surprised that no one's mentioned music as well, because music's a good one too. I'm sure that you guys were thinking it maybe, but I find music in the car sessions can be really powerful. And those are things, like you said, Amy, my shifts are all over the place. And so I find that I am in the car a lot. So it's like, well, why not make that car time work for Jesus and work for the relationship with Jesus? So
I love that. Yeah.
I was just going to can I read something quickly? Just a Bible verse. It's a very familiar one. And I'm going to give a little shout out to Chelsea Willis here, because she talked about it in her sermonette at the youth rally. And I love the version that she read it into, and that's the one I'm going to read it in. It's Romans 12 in the Message version. And it's the sort of verses where it talks about living sacrifices that might be familiar. And I love what it says in the Message. It says, so here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. And I think probably at the moment, that's a little bit where my intimacy with Jesus walk is. It's about in the busyness, in the chaotic of each day being different, how can I make each day how can I include God in my day? Sometimes I start the day with prayer and to say, hey, God, I'm just going to keep this conversation going throughout the day, and I'll just pick it up every now and then, and we just kind of float through it. But I do think that there's a little bit of a danger in taking that verse at face value as well. So for me, I know that I have to be accountable to my relationship with Jesus as well. And so things that help me in that perspective is sometimes like self-accountability. Like if I commit to reading a Christian book or a devotional book, I sort of have it in myself, okay, I'm getting through this book, I'm going to read a chapter a day kind of thing. Or also having a prayer partner has been really important for my relationship with Jesus as well, because not only does it remind me to pray for someone else, but it just reminds me and prompts me throughout the day to keep connecting with Jesus. So I guess, the other thing I was going to say too was, and this came out in, I'm trying to remember where I heard it, but I think it's significant, and it talks. So two things, I guess. One is there's lots available on our phones, but sometimes that's not always helpful. So while I have loved doing devotionals and using all sorts of apps and things on my phone, sometimes it's not good for me. And so I actually find going analog sometimes a bit better. So, and I love the idea of having a place, and, whether it's a chair in your room or a comfortable spot, a place in your home. For me, it's also outdoors in my garden. If I head into the garden, that's where I'm meeting Jesus. It's kind of like if you have a friendship, it's your favorite coffee shop that you go to. yeah, it's like, okay, if I'm in my garden, I know that I'm meeting Jesus there, and that's kind of a standing appointment that me and Jesus have together. So yeah, I guess my encouragement would be keep trying different things. You do have to put effort in. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It hasn't come easy for me.
I think that's really important. Yeah. It's with every relationship, right? You always have to put in effort to every relationship if you want there to be intimacy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just, yeah, keep trying different things, and you never know. I might start circling back to some of those things that I've tried in the past but weren't right then. Maybe they'll come good.
Yeah, exactly. It might have just been the season, who knows? But I like that. I like that point of sometimes you do have to trial and error and work out what works for you different times in your day. I just would, if you don't mind, I just wanted to say something about, like, because for me, I used to be a very routine person before I had kids. I would wake up at 5:30 every morning, and that was my time with God. And I had a certain time. I had my chair, like Lucy. I had, and it was a very routine thing. But routine for me completely went out the window when I had kids. And I know that for the young people listening, you might be like, well, I'm not having kids for a really long time. But the reason why I want to mention this is because in different seasons of life, you're going to have to, I think, be flexible and work out what works for you in different seasons. And for me, not only was becoming a parent tipping my life upside down in so many ways, it tipped my life upside down in terms of my relationship with Jesus. And I have to say that probably for the first few months, I really, really struggled because I didn't know anymore how to do it. Like, how do I have intimacy with Jesus when somebody else is two other little people are dependent on everything? Like, where do I find time to fit in Jesus? And so, yeah, for me, my little one wakes up at 5 a.m. For me to start my day with Jesus, I would have to get up at least 4:30, and it's just not practical at this point in my life. It used to be, but now it's not. And I have to come to terms with that's okay. So because it's not practical, how do I do it now? And so for me, in some ways, I've actually learned, like Lucy was saying, some really beautiful things about just doing it all through the day. So I might not be able to have a real set out carved time anymore that's uninterrupted. Some days I do try and have some carved time, and it just doesn't end up happening, or I get 5 minutes in and something crazy is happening with my children and I have to go. And so it's just that constant intimacy with Jesus. And sometimes it looks like having music on and praying through the worship music that's in my kitchen as I'm doing it every day. Sometimes it's, playing a podcast as I'm driving to an appointment. Other times it's just having my Bible open on my kitchen bench, and whenever I can, I'll glance at pages and contemplate those as I go. And so I just wanted to say that because I know that different seasons look different, and it's also and that also means for your relationship with God. And like Lucy said, trial and error, just try different things and see what works, because at the end of the day, like Cam said, it's seeking Jesus, and he promises that you will find him, but there's not one way to seek Jesus. And I think that's really important to remember. So this is kind of...
Sorry, Amy, I think there's there was a myth that I used to believe when I was young in my walk with God, and that was like that I had to be in a certain sort of place or space or frame of mind for me to connect with Jesus. And I just want to dispute that, because I don't Jesus is constantly trying to connect with us. And I remember one person using the analogy God is like a wall. You cannot push the wall away. When you push against the wall, you push yourself away. And I think that's most often the case, is we push ourselves away, and we get into this sort of, or we lie to ourselves, I think, and we go, oh, I can't reconnect with Jesus unless I go to church, or unless I, go to the beach side at sunset or whatever it is, and get into nature. But some of the best connections I've had with Jesus are actually just in my car when I'm angry or frustrated, or when I'm I remember I've shared this with some people at my church during Bible studies. Is one of the best times I felt close with Jesus was when I was so angry about something that was happening in my life, and I just started yelling at him. and crazily enough, I felt really close with Jesus, or really intimate with Jesus in that time, because he just he's like, I'm there. You can yell at me. If you want to use me as a punching bag, I can be, and I'll take all that. But you're going to need to accept the answers I have for that. And so that was a really crazy moment. This happened in January this year, and I was just like, that's crazy how God is like that, that he's constantly there, always wanting to just reconnect. And it's me that is pushing myself away from Jesus most often than not. And that all I need to do is just go, oh, Jesus. It's like that story of Peter, when Peter's walking on the water and he loses sight of Jesus and he starts sinking, and then he goes, save me. And Jesus is there like that, like straight away, not even a moment passes, and he's there right next to Peter. And I think dispelling that myth that Jesus is distant in some way, or somebody who's just up there sort of thing, is really important, that he's here with us through his Holy Spirit, walking life with us.
Emmanuel, God with us, like he's with us. I love that personal story, Cam. I love that. I got like tingles up my spine when you said that, because I've had moments like that too, where I remember my dad saying, you know what, it's okay to be angry at God. Tell him, talk to him. He wants to, I mean, David does it in the Psalms, like it's, but like you said, but to then allow his peace and to allow the answers to come and not to push them away. So I know that we've kind of touched on it really while we were chatting about the how we personally do it. But is there anything else that you would like to say for young people that maybe, they're running from uni to their after uni job, or, and they're running from thing to thing, which is often the fast-paced life that we all lived. Is there anything else that you would like to say to them as any words of advice on how to fit Jesus in and make him the priority in the busyness? Any other words of advice in relation to that? I know we've touched on it, but...
So for me, a few weeks ago, it was a very, very busy part of the semester.
Exam,
and I was doing an assignment. It was a Thursday morning, and I had to do this assignment. So instead of spending time with God like I should have, I was working on my assignment. And I worked on it all morning, and then in the afternoon I had other work that I had to do. And then I started getting really stressed about everything that was going on, and I was getting some text messages about things that I was organizing, and I was getting really worried and stressed, and I knew that I hadn't spent time with God, and I just had a lot to do, and I just kept doing what I needed to do. And then finally that night, I popped into bed and I just started praying. And as soon as I started praying, I just felt so much peace, and I can't even explain the feeling. I felt so relieved and at peace, and I realized that if I had just started my day with God, I could have avoided all the stress and all the worry. And when I don't spend time with God, I learn real quickly that I should have spent time with God. So I think when we do put God before all our busy things that we have, because life can get crazy, it helps with the busyness. And when we put God first, everything else seems a bit less stressful. That's what I found.
Yeah, it's like that quote that says, I'm too busy not to pray. Like, you're busy, but you're actually too busy not to pray. Yeah. Any other last bits of advice for our busy lives and fitting it in look, I know that you guys have said some really quality stuff in surrounding that anyway. So yeah, I think just sometimes it's where you are, making God a priority then and there, in the space and the time that we have. And I love that, using your car time. If you've got a long trip to work, use it to praise God, read, listen to a podcast, pray, yeah, make it a God time. That they are definitely some of the most beautiful, intimate times while you're traveling. So I just wanted to ask you, we're 20 past 8, so we're coming to a close. Is there any resources or tools and tips that you have found really useful in your trial and error and your relationship with God that you would love to recommend because it's been really powerful for you? So that might be even like a devotional book, or a tool of how you like to read the Bible, or something practical that we could give our young people if they're not really sure where to start. It could give them a few resources and tools that they could kickstart their intimacy with Jesus.
I was going to talk about, Amy, Jolt.
Definitely, go for
yeah,
it.
So Jolt is something, like, I think I was like in the youth advisory when that kind of first blossomed, and I think the reason I love it is because it also relates to mentoring. And I talked about before, like with the whole, you know, there can be a little bit of a temptation there to just coast along and say, oh yeah, you know, Jesus, you're coasting along with me. But actually having someone to keep you accountable, or a mentor, or like a prayer partner or someone like that, and just having someone to ask you about Jolt. So Jolt stands for Jesus, others, lifestyle, talents. And I think all of those things actually reflect on intimacy with Jesus in a pretty holistic way. So just having someone ask you those questions and say, hey, how are you going in your relationship with Jesus? You know, how are you serving him? How are you interacting with other people? How is Jesus making impact on your relationship with others? You know, is there anything that you're struggling with in terms of lifestyle at the moment? What are your challenge areas? Can I bring them to Jesus with you? And then what are you doing with your talents? So that talks about spiritual gifts. It talks about career, it talks about how you're serving Jesus and others. And I just think that little acronym is a great resource. And there's a little mentor mate booklet too. Maybe if you're an older youth, so like I'm probably in that demographic now of the higher end of the 20s. Yeah, that's it, Cam. Woohoo! Were you going to share the same thing?
Oh, I was thinking about it.
Oh, so good. So like this is something that we can use as well, as we're older youth as well. And I think for me, being mentored and mentoring have both been ways that my relationship with Jesus has grown. So I really encourage people to jump on board with that. Yeah, it's a great resource.
So interestingly enough, Lucy, I actually, in one of our youth team meetings, we had like a little retreat back in August, I think it was, and I got them to actually do Jolt with Jesus. So instead of doing Jolt with each other, you sit in the presence of Jesus and go, Jesus, how is my relationship with you?
Right.
And then invite him to speak into that. How is my relationship with others? Where am I lacking? And doing it with Jesus. So that's another.
I'm going to try that one.
Yeah. So like I think you're doing it with others, that accountability, but doing it with Jesus is another idea too. So there.
Very good. It's another layer. It's great.
I think there's like we always find time for the things that are important to us. And like for me, Jesus is important, but for some people who are listening out there, Jesus might not be important. But I just want to assure them that like for Jesus, they are super important. So each of us are the most important things. Like Jesus says, you know, he came to die on the cross, obviously through the gospel message. But I believe firmly that if it was just me or if it was just whoever's listening, if it was just them, Jesus still would have died on the cross for them, because they are unlimitedly important to Jesus. And so just want to urge that to making Jesus important in their life. And secondly, I'm a firm believer of just reading the Bible. Like, it might not make sense sometimes, but there's some good sort of books, like with John. John is an excellent book for a new person to start reading. And then possibly going into Matthew, Mark, Luke sort of area. There's some really good podcasts out there. I really enjoy listening. One podcast I listen to is the Storyline Church podcast. I really like them. There's some awesome devotional books out there. These are just some of the ways that I kind of connect with Jesus. Most often than not, it's podcasts or sermons or things that I'm just listening to in the car as I'm like driving from place to place. But yeah, just encourage everyone to make time for Jesus, because he's super important. He's like the most important. We talked about how foundational, how directional he is. And you'll make time for the things that are important to you. And that might sound harsh, but it's true.
Yeah. Any tools or tips from you, Megan, that you would love to share?
Yes, well, I definitely agree with you, Cam, about just the Bible. Like, I think I love devotional books are very, very important, but I think also just spending time with God in his word is important. But I also want to encourage you, if you're reading through the Bible and there's a part that you're not identifying with, like a genealogy or something, just like don't feel like you have to keep reading that part. You can always go to another area of the Bible that might be better for you in that moment. And but for me, I have lots of books I could recommend. I love reading. But for those who don't love reading, I think young people, we all love music. And before I got Spotify, I listened to the same like Casting Crowns album on repeat, and I got a bit sick of it. But once I got Spotify, I couldn't believe how much Christian music there was out there. I had no idea. And there's there's so many good songs. So just, whatever works for you, reading, music, whatever you love, like use that to connect with God.
And the cool thing, I mean, obviously, like Lucy said before, sometimes having it all on our phone can be a distraction. So you're going to have to work out what that looks like for you. But at the same time, in terms of convenience, it is all there. You can have your podcasts on there, the music is on there. And for some people, the Bible app works really well for them too. And there are some great devotions on the Bible app. One of the cool functions of it is that you can actually do them with other people. And that brings in that accountability element as well, that you can do those with people. And I just thought that I would bring your attention to this bookmark as well. Both you guys have talked about the importance of just getting in and reading the Bible. And sometimes that can seem daunting if you haven't done a lot of that before. But what I love about this bookmark is that it's just got some really practical questions that you can ask yourself when you read the Bible, so that you are able to get meaning and allow the Holy Spirit to bring meaning. And so the questions like, what is new? What surprises you? What don't you understand? Which is a really good one. What will I obey or apply? And I love the fifth one because it's so practical about being a disciple, is what can I share with someone this week about what I've learned? And so I find some really great questions that you can ask yourself and the Holy Spirit to prompt you as you read a Bible passage. So hopefully guys, as you have listened this evening, it's 8:29, that you have been inspired and encouraged, because like hopefully has come across, Jesus is the most important relationship. He loves you incredibly, and that intimacy he desires so much. He wants that closeness, that walk with you. And it's going to look practically different for you than it does to me and the rest of us. But trial and error and just working out, what does intimacy with Jesus look like for me in my season? And that may change, and that's okay. But finding those ways that are going to work for you, because he promises that if you seek, you will find him. It's not a might or a maybe, it's a will. And so we just want to encourage you. And I would also just like to pray for you guys, all of you listening, before we finish off. And before I do, if you do have any questions, anything that we've said this evening that you'd like to know more about, do you guys feel comfortable that somebody might be able to contact you if they had any questions that you might have raised, particularly during the evening?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think all of us are found on Facebook, so you can message on Facebook, or you can contact me and I can get you in contact with any of these awesome people if you have any further things that you'd like to chat to them about. So let me pray for you. Jesus, having a chat about you and the importance of having a relationship, closeness and intimacy with you has been an absolute joy. And look, I just want to pray for every single person that is watching this evening and every person that will watch this in the future. Jesus, you love them. You died for them. You rose again for them so that they can have the gift of eternity forever. And I just pray that that personal love will hit them in the heart and that their only response will be to want to have that walk with you. Some of them may be feeling a bit daunted of what that looks like in their busy lives and starting that process. But I pray that something that's been discussed tonight will make sense, that they'll be willing to give it a go and just start the process. And I know that you will lead them and you will guide them in the best way that they can make a relationship work for them personally. So thank you that you desire that with us. And I just want to pray a blessing over everyone listening. I want to thank you also for Lucy and Cam and Megan. Bless them and their relationships too, and just be with us the rest of the evening. And we pray this all in the mighty and powerful name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And we just want to wish you all the best as you journey and you walk with Jesus. See ya. See you guys. Thank you so much.